looks like we have everybody here. So I will call the March 23rd Planning Commission meeting to order. And we will do the Pledge of Allegiance. So if you have a flag that you can look at, we'll get started. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Danielle, if we could have a roll call, please.
David Newbill.
Here. Present.
Jenny Mckay.
Here.
Lindsay.
Yes, ma'am.
Danielle, you're not coming through well. You need to get closer.
If that was me, I'm here. Can't hear you.
Neil Watson.
Here.
Johnny Sevigny.
Here.
Penzine. Here.
All right, we have all members present. What I'm going to do actually before we get into the approval of the agenda and the meeting minutes and stuff, because we have a new member, I want to welcome you, Jeff. Appreciate you joining us. Look forward to your contributions to our commission. I thought it might be nice just to take a few minutes and go around to all the members, and we'll say a little brief something about who we are, and then we'll end with you and you can tell us a little bit about yourself. So I'm Jenny Sevigny. I've lived in this community for most of my life. I'm a Brandon High School graduate. I'm also have an engineering degree and a law degree, but I spent most of my career as an engineer for General Motors. I'm retired now. I'm on that wonderful snowbird age where I'm currently in Florida. I don't like the Michigan winters anymore, so I stay down here during the winter months and come back when the flowers start blossoming. So with that, I'll go through and call on people just because it's easier. So David, why don't you say a little bit about yourself?
I'm a 13-year resident of Ortonville, Groveland Township. I live on Bird Road. I'm a financial planner. I've been a financial planner for 22 years. Several different careers before that. And I've been on the Planning Commission. I think this is my second year or third year.
All right. And Lynn Shank?
I'm an ex-math teacher, made my Jenny Sevigny miserable in high school. I've been retired 15 years. I've lived in this community over 50 years. And I made Bob DePalma's kids very, very miserable, and Patty Back's kids miserable. And I've been on the commission for almost probably 25 years or more.
Yeah, she's our senior member.
Senior.
Jim Christopher.
Hey, Jeff, Jim Christopher here, a resident 20 years, I think, probably today. Been on the Planning Commission before. Now I'm on the Planning Commission as a representative of the board, as a trustee. I would say my disciplines or my perspectives are construction, facility management, program and project management, and development.
Thanks. Neil Laughlin.
I've been in Groveland Township. We've lived here about 28 years. Raised our kids here. They're grown and gone. Was an engineer at Chrysler for 30 years, retired, been retired for about 6 years now and loving it. And just love the community. We're here to stay and enjoy being on the commission. Been on the commission probably a couple of years now.
Okay, and our next newest member, Jenny Mckay.
Hi, Jeff. I'm Jenny Mckay. I have lived in Groveland Township here in Holly for a little over 30 years. I retired from Waterford Schools recently with 35 years in payroll and benefits as an administrator. And I love to farm, garden, use the land as the resources every day. We raise beef cattle, so.
Oh,
And I've been on the planning commission since September.
Okay, that leaves you, Jeff, to give us a little history on your background.
First of all, thank you all for welcoming me. It is really, I'm excited. It's an honor. It's a distinct pleasure to be, this is my first ever involvement in local government. So I'm thrilled. And I also love the community. I'm really, happy to hear that you all who have served for so long have enjoyed your experience. And I'm looking forward to that also. I attended Grand Valley State University, studied political science, got my law degree from University of Toledo. I practiced law for about 13 years, and then I made the transition into insurance. I have 4 kids, and at that time, my kids were keeping me very busy, and the grind of litigating was just, it was not fulfilling. So I carved a new path, and it served me well because now I've handled excess and surplus commercial claims. I've managed municipal risk, which is, really coincidental that I'm here, serving local government after they were policyholders of my company for so long. I then moved into personal home and auto, farm, commercial lines insurance. I manage with the local property and casualty insurance company, Michigan-based. My wife and I have been members of the community here in Groveland Township for, since '98. So what do we say that was? Many
Glenn,
years.
do the math.
Yeah, 20. I don't want to throw out the wrong number. So many years, but yeah, I'm thrilled to be here, and I'm looking forward to contributing and adding to the value of the community.
Great.
Great.
Welcome.
Thanks, Jeff. Appreciate it. All right, with that, let's get started, and we'll do the approval of the minutes from the January 26th meeting. So does anyone have any corrections or comments regarding the minutes?
I had one correction I sent to Danielle. I don't know if it made it into the minutes, but under our public hearing roll call, my name wasn't listed as a yes. So I just want to make sure that gets into the minutes.
You received that, Danielle?
Yeah, I think
Okay, Danielle, you're gonna have to sit closer or something. We have a very difficult time hearing you.
I am right on top of it. Too sure. I did get it. It just didn't send out updated copies.
Yeah, I mean, we heard Lynn and Jeff very well, but I still can't hear you. You're breaking up and,
Maybe you're too close.
Oh, maybe.
Get farther away. Come on, move.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
yeah, that's great. That's
Oh, I
great.
was too close. Okay.
Okay, yeah, very good. All right.
Yes, I
Um,
did get it.
Thank you.
So if we have no additional comments or corrections, I'll take a motion.
I take a motion that we approve the minutes from the January 26th meeting in 2021.
I'll second that.
And just a little procedural thing for Zoom. When we're doing, pretty fundamental things like this, I'm not going to do a roll call vote. I know Ben had kind of suggested that. If we have a nay on anything, we'll go back and do the roll call vote. But while it's just the procedural stuff, let's just, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any nays? Okay, meeting minutes are approved. And then for the today's or this evening's agenda, if we could have a motion to
I
approve
make a
that,
motion,
or
we approve today's agenda for March 23rd, 2021 at 7 o'clock. Second,
Second.
anybody?
I guess I'll second that.
David, thank you. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? All right, the approval for this evening's agendas. We don't have any resolutions. Next is the communications and notices. The one thing I would comment is that Bob or Danielle sent it out on behalf of Bob, an email regarding some webinars that are being offered for planning and zoning for wind and solar. So there are 3 webinars, 1-hour webinars on Tuesday, March 30th, April 13th, and April 27th. So you just get online. I registered for these. I think that it's an important area for our community to think about as we go forward. You know, as we get into the master plan later, you know, I think we really want to look at our community as a place where we think of green and environmental types construction and solutions as we go forward, or even construction criteria that we put in, say, maybe our overlay district. So I think it's, you know, educating ourselves more about what's out there and available and resources would be helpful. So I would encourage any of you, it's free, you know, you just get on and sign up for it. It's a webinar, it's 1 hour on Tuesday, March 30th, April 13th, and April 27th.
What time?
1 o'clock.
1 to 2.
Good guesses.
So,
I registered for all 3 of them too. So
okay, great, great. With that, we have new business. And this is, I'm going to let the individuals, you know, give more information, but I was a little confused. And so I called Bob today to understand this better, what exactly the expectation was of the commission tonight on this topic. And this is really just an information for us to better understand some of their plans, for us to provide some feedback. And then if, for the plans that they have, if they were to go forward, for us to kind of discuss what would be the mechanism that we would use, whether it's special use permit, you know, things like that, that we would have as we go forward. So for those of you that have lived in the community, I went to school with the daughters of the original owners of that property. So I'm familiar with that property. It's been there for years. It's had different uses. Most always, though, in my lifetime anyway, has been the horse farm in one form or the other. It's a beautiful piece of property. So, and I've noticed, you know, over the years, you guys have really worked on fixing up the external buildings and the fencing along the road and stuff. So it's a nice piece of property. So I'm excited to hear your vision and plans for what you have. So with that, I'll hand it over to whoever. And please, when you speak, just introduce yourself. We can see your name on it, but for Danielle and recording the minutes, just state your name. So I'll open it up to whoever wants to go first.
Sounds good. Thank you. And thanks again to all of your commission here for entertaining us tonight and letting us be part of your meeting. The reason for us to meet tonight was just to, number one, we've been in communication with Bob and the township for quite some time. And we wanted to kind of do an informational meeting to just kind of share with you what our plans are for Narren Farms, which is what we've called the property today. And so I have a brief presentation that I was going to do this evening and just kind of show you a little bit about the history, the different improvements that we've made, and where we want to go moving forward. Can you all hear me perfectly at this point? Okay, good.
Yes.
Good, thank you.
Hey, Carl. Carl,
Yes.
do you want to introduce yourself with your name? I know they need.
Sure. Yeah. My name's Carl Saz. I've been a resident of Groveland Township since 2010. So love the community. This is where my family lives. My kids, my wife, we all live in Groveland Township. Narren Farms was something that we purchased a couple of years later. We have one of our co-owners on the call today, Kristen Desher. So Kristen was the one that had mentioned that And I'm going to let her talk at the end here in just a second when I introduce our team. And then we also have our operations manager, Holly Cam. She's on the call, but doesn't have her video on right now. And she's also here to just kind of provide any feedback or questions that you may have. And you'll see how our team works on this property and what we're hoping to do. So if I could just share my screen, let me see if I could figure out how to do this, and I will.
Danielle might need to.
I'm not sure if it's going to allow me to do it.
Danielle, do you need to allow that?
I think if you make him co-host of the
I
meeting,
just-
then you should have the ability.
I have the option to make him host, but I don't know if I want to do that because might change my recording. I don't, so where's co-host? It says make host. Can I do that?
Go ahead and I'll make you host as soon as I'm done.
Let's try that. Okay, go ahead.
Okay, thank you very much. Appreciate it. Now it looks like I can share. All right, so let's see here. Okay, I'm gonna have to make you host again. It looks like I have to jump off and jump back on. It's a security thing in my system. So give me 1 second.
Okay,
Is it the one that says Bob De Palma?
yep.
Okay. All right. Hold on. Make host. All right. I will be right back on as soon as I get this. Oh, you know what? Now it's working. So let me just share.
Oh, yeah.
All right. Are you able to see my screen?
Yes.
Great.
Yep, we can see it, Carl.
Okay. So let me just load the presentation real quick and I'll get started here. So first of all, I prepared this to just give you a visual of what we've been working on at the farm and what we're doing. This is actually one of the pictures of one of the houses. This is what we call this the clubhouse. This was not one of the houses that was lived in prior to us working there. It was a house that they really used for bringing in the horses and essentially just kind of the horses would come in on the lower level over here. But we've converted this into a house. Here's the agenda of what I was going to cover today. The history of Narren Farms. We'll talk about phase 1, phase 2, and phase 3. We're currently in phase 2 of our plans and we're about to move into phase 3. And then I'll tell you a little bit about who we are, our team, our vision, and our experience with doing this. So let me start with just our history. So we purchased Narren Farms back in December 14th of 2012. At the time, the property had been foreclosed by Freddie Mac, and it was in foreclosure. It had noticeable mismanagement over the years. You know, I had talked to Bob about this many times, where when we took possession of the property, there was, you know, at one point an overland hose that was feeding two of the buildings from one of the other buildings. So obviously that wasn't, you know, that's not up to code, but the property I think had just fallen into disrepair over the years. And the people that had owned it prior to us really, I think, had tried their best, but you know, this was during the financial crisis before 2008, and I think their business model had just it wasn't working at the time. So when we took over the property, it needed a lot of work, and the first thing that we started to do was to rehab the different houses, and we started with the lodge, which is the biggest house on the property. That's the one that has the address of 1100 Bird Road. And upon rehabbing that, we started renting it out initially to a family that had horses and wanted to have their daughter riding at the farm. After the rehab of the lodge, we kind of picked one property at the time, and we did the Woods Cabin, which is the small A-frame on the top of the hill. We did the Clubhouse next, which was the third property to go onto Airbnb. And then we also did the Groom's Cabin, which was the first property to go on Airbnb. Airbnb is our preferred marketing tool for essentially getting people from outside the community to understand that there is lodging that is available in Groveland. So when people come to visit family, when they come here for weddings, we've had honeymooners, we've had a number of different guests that have come that have stayed with us. We want them to have an immersive experience. And this is important because we believe, and you'll see in just a second, based on our market research, that when people travel today, a Holiday Inn is a Holiday Inn, whether you're in Boise, Idaho, in Clarkston, Michigan, or in New York. Okay, there's going to be very little differences on the inside of that Holiday Inn. That's not a good way to get a sense for the feel and the community of a place. An Airbnb, you're not staying in a hotel, you're staying in someone's home. And it really gives you the feel and the character of that location, right? Now, in addition to that, we've also put up new fencing. And I know that a lot of the neighbors have noticed that new fencing go up there. The fencing was falling into disrepair and needed to be done. So we've done all new fencing. And then we've also done a Phragmites treatment on Lake Narren. Lake Narren has become infested with Phragmites. So last year, if any of you have noticed, that there was a large burning operation that happened on Lake Narren. We worked with the DNR and the fire department to do a controlled burn of Lake Narren and eliminate as much of the Phragmites as possible. We're going to be doing another one of those shortly. And then just recently, donkeys have arrived at the farm, and we now have donkeys there as well, which I'll explain what their role is going to be in a second. So over the years, this has been over $500,000 in improvements at the horse farm. Our vision is really not to change the horse farm itself. We are going to keep it as a horse farm, but we need to create an economic plan that's sustainable for it, because the plan that was there before was just really not going to work, and not enough to sustain a property of that size with the maintenance needs that it has. So let's talk a little bit about it. What you see here is an image, an aerial view of the farm itself. And you can see that we bought the adjacent lots to it. So we actually own Narren Farms, which is essentially this lot right here. It's a fairly large lot, 56-acre lot. And then we've purchased 2 lots to the north from the Wolf family that own them, and then a large lot to the south. And we'll talk about why that was in a second. But essentially, we've expanded kind of the operation so that outside of just the eastern side and the north, we really don't have a lot of neighbors around the property. Most of the adjacent land is actually our own adjacent land. We have 3 entrances, one at the north, one for the horse barn operation, and then one to the south. So we actually have 3 separate entrances where we can come and go. And then we currently have 4 houses on the property that are all running as vacation rentals today. The groom's cabin is the farthest to the north. The woods cabin is right here. The lodge is the one that you could see from the road. And then the clubhouse is the one that was on the main image. So what have we done? Well, phase 1 was really about fixing up the houses and repurposing towards vacation rentals. And why did we do that? Well, here's a pretty neat site. This is actually called alltherooms.com. And you can all go to this site if you want to, and you can actually do any research about where you can stay in a given location. So I pulled up Groveland Township, Michigan, and I wanted to see if I'm going to stay in Groveland Township, where is it that I can actually have lodging, right? And you can see that there's only 5 available properties in all of Groveland Township that have lodging available. 4 of them are the ones that we have on the farm. And then there's one right here around Trip Road. I believe that's actually Mount Holly. And there might be another one up here. Consequently, due to the short supply in the township, what we've noticed is that the occupancy rates in this area are very, very high. In fact, the average occupancy rate right now is 60%, which is quite high for Airbnb. Our occupancy rate is north of 80%. And whenever I tell people about this, they kind of laugh a little bit. They're like, Groveland, why would somebody want to go to Groveland? And I'm like, well, why wouldn't they, right? We've got Mount Holly, we've got the Renaissance Festival in the fall, we've got the haunted house up on Dixie Highway, we've got Chrysler that's very close in proximity. So a lot of expats that come work for Chrysler for a month or two on end want to stay in a short-term rental. They don't want to be in a hotel for that entire length of time. We've got a number of parks and the ORV park, for example, which just opened. We've got Groveland Township and the riding trails, Holly State Recreation Area, the hunting. There are a number of outdoor activities, and the township has done a lot over the years at making this an outdoor recreational mecca. Okay, there's also the park, the water park that's off of Grange Hall Road, and so these locations need some form of lodging, and the closest thing that you can find is really down near Sashabaw Road with the hotel that they're building down there. And there's not much up here. And I don't know that there's going to be a hotel or any type of motel that's going to be built anytime soon. So we think of ourselves as kind of like the spare bedroom for Groveland Township, right? If you have family coming into town, if you have a wedding, if you have kids from out of town coming in, many of those people will stay at one of our locations. And given our average daily rate is somewhere between $100 and $150 a night, we're very cost competitive with most hotels. In fact, you're getting a house for the same price that you would be paying for a hotel room. You're getting a whole house. And so what we've done is we've taken the houses that were there and we've made them into these beautiful kind of iconic locations now. We have a 5-star rating on Airbnb. We're considered super host. We've hosted hundreds of people that have come and stayed at our locations now.
We have actually almost 500 reviews, Carl, and not every single person always reviews. So probably closer to 600, 700 people who have come to stay.
Yep. So 600, 700 people. This is just one of the properties that I'm showing you here to kind of give you a sense for like the quality of the work that we do. This is the Clubhouse. Again, it's the one that I pointed on the front of the presentation. And again, you notice with this, we're really not trying to take away from the look and feel of the community. This is not meant to look like a hotel room of any kind. It's meant to be kind of in the look and feel of the surrounding area. So we have barn doors separating the bedroom from the living room right here, okay? We have the original kind of structure built in. We have a kitchen made with reclaimed wood from the stables that were there. This is really an experience of living on a farm, of almost like going back in time. We really want people to go back to a time that was simpler, where they could relax, get off their social media, get off their cell phone, and just live communally, which is what this farm's always been about, right? It's always been lots of people, lots of activity, lots of animals there. So that was phase one of our plan. Phase two was actually to move beyond lodging into experiences. And what do we mean by experiences? Airbnb has been over time migrating away from just being the hotel room alternative, but really being a destination. So instead of somebody coming to just stay in a house, we really want them to be able to come and experience a lot of different activities there. So for example, this year we've added things like horseback riding. So we're going to be offering horseback riding experiences. So horses are coming back to the farm. We've recently gotten 2 miniature donkeys. This is Samson and this is Jack. They are already on the property as of about a week ago. We're going to be having chickens, and this is the chicken coop that we're going to be constructing in the middle of the field. And then we're going to be offering paddle boards and bicycles for people to be able to do the riding trails along with enjoying the Lake Narren. Now that we've gotten rid of some of the Phragmites, we'll be able to access the lake from the east side of the lake, not just the west side of the lake. So we've got all of those. In addition, we've partnered with a couple of different groups to bring some additional activities to the farm. So for example, this year, we're working on a deal to bring the Bloomfield Hills Blackhawks equestrian team. This is the girls equestrian team from Bloomfield Hills. Narren Farms should be their home base over the next couple of years. We're in kind of final negotiations with their coach, who's at this point committed to bringing her team, and they're scattered all over the place right now, but they're going to be housing their horses, and they're going to be doing their practices at our farm. We'll also be potentially hosting the Oakland County Sheriff's Department Mounted Division at our farm this year. This is the the deputies that you see that ride horses periodically once a year. They do a training and they need a fairly large facility. So we're working with them on volunteering our facility there for them to host their mounted division practice. We also partnered with a local gardener who has built a fairly sizable garden at Narren Farms. And at this point, we're going to be selling, I think, produce directly at a couple of the different farmers markets, and we're growing the produce organically at the farm. And Barry is the one in charge of that. And of course, we, there's many more, but these are just some of the highlights of some of the experiences that we're going to be offering this year. So where are we moving to? Phase 3, and phase 3 is events. Now we're not there yet, and we wanted to collaborate a little bit on this. We firmly believe that you should ask permission rather than forgiveness, and this is one of those things where this is why I've been so adamant about just keeping the township involved in the entire process. I know that events in the past in this township haven't always worked out the way that people intended, and several locations have had to be shut down because they either had fire code violations or issues, and so we don't want any of those, right? So we want to involve you in the process as early as possible to make sure that we don't do anything that wouldn't make sense. And so this is kind of what our vision for this looks like. What we're really hoping to do is kind of come full circle. Narren Farms has always been a place that has hosted many people and large events in the past. We don't think we're ready for large events, but we think we're ready for small or medium-sized events. And what we want to start with is kind of outdoor weddings. Think of it like we would build a platform like this along the lake, overlooking the lake. Would have outdoor seating. Perhaps we would have a tent instead of a greenhouse like what you're seeing here. So a tent would be a less permanent structure, but essentially a really beautiful kind of beautifying of the land, and allowing larger groups of people to gather to be able to do a wedding or an event. We're also looking at it in terms of having some outdoor structures like what you're seeing here, to where we have the capability at this point, because there's plenty of power and parking on site, to where we think we can host groups of anywhere from, on the low end, 50 to as high as maybe 250 people. I know that there were events there when it was K Farms and Amber Way where they had, over 1,000 people on that location. But we think we need to kind of crawl, walk, and then run. But this is one of those things where we want to look at the possibility of having events, and here's where we kind of stand when it comes to this, right? Our team at this point, we have two primary owners. So the Kristen, for example, and her husband Craig are part owners in Narren Farms, and then myself and my wife Melissa are the other owners. But we have a whole team behind us that help us with managing this property. So, for example, the two ladies on the left there that you see, Holly Cam is on this call. She's our operations manager, and Holly has helped us with a variety of different projects in the past. And then Megan Sullivan is on the bottom left there, and she's our property manager. And this team here has worked on a variety of different properties that we've owned in the past. So we currently own and manage the Verde Real Estate building in Independence Township. This is the building that is that red brick building with a green roof right before you get into downtown Clarkston on the right-hand side. So it's 2 stories, about 35,000 square feet. We manage a number of tenants in there. It's the only Class A building in Clarkston currently. We also recently acquired and converted Mill Pond Bed and Breakfast in Clarkston into a bed and breakfast that we're operating there. We hope to open that within the next month. And that's another one of our properties that we manage. So this isn't one of those things where we have no experience with dealing with tenants. We're well versed in understanding how to create immersive experiences for our guests. And we were initially attracted to the farm and Groveland because of the shared vision that we have, that this is an outdoor recreational mecca for people. And people are coming from all over to enjoy the outdoors here. And we want to be a part of that. And we kind of look at ourselves as the spare bedroom of Groveland Township. So that was my presentation. I wanted to just kind of allow Kristen to just add her comments in after this, just so that she can mention the experience that she's had so far managing the property for us, and then open it up to you for questions. But what we were hoping to accomplish today, by the way, was not to make any motion or to seek approval for anything, but really just to invite you out for a field trip to come visit the farm this summer. And really see for yourself what we've been doing, because at that point, we're going to probably want to seek a special use permit or some kind of an ordinance to allow us to operate very similar to how maybe the Renaissance Festival operates or the Haunted House operates. We see ourselves as a seasonal business, a business that is going to operate primarily during the spring and summer months, and maybe some of the fall, where we're hoping to have a couple of events. And at first it might be just one or two events while we kind of get our bearings and figure things out. But eventually we want to make this a place where people can come, get married, they can have their lodging, they can enjoy an experience, and they can really get a sense for what Groveland Township is all about. So anyway, that was my presentation. I'll share it with the entire group, and that way you have a copy of it. But Kristen, did you want to add anything?
Yeah, I mean, I just wanted to mention I was personally managing all of the Airbnbs themselves up until I just had my third child about 7 months ago. So a few months after she was born, thank you. Yes, we have 3 daughters and we're in Clarkston, just south of you guys. But so I directly worked with the guests. I'm the one who kind of really knows their wants, their needs. I was one who was able to do most of the decorating, really trying to keep intact just the look and feel of what was there when we originally all purchased it, just with some nice added upgrades so that people want to come to the spare bedroom. So if you have any questions about what guests seem to be looking for, or what their experiences have been, I can just tell you it's been nothing but amazing. And it just amazes me how much it grows, that people are really excited to come to Groveland, to come to Lake Naren, and just to relax and unwind. And they're coming from far away, and they're coming from Bloomfield Hills just to kind of unplug and unwind. So if you had any questions for me directly about the homes and what people are looking for, I'd be happy to answer any of those too.
I have one question. What would you say is the average age group that you're booking on that property?
That's a great question. It kind of ebbs and flows at the time of year. So I would say more in the winter months, it's probably more on the younger end. You're getting a lot of people are coming to go skiing and snowboarding at Mount Holly. They're just kind of coming to get away. As a mom of 3 young girls, ages 5 and under, you get a lot of couples who are like, I just need to get away from my kids for a couple of nights. I'd say in the summer months, the age range really varies. You have, up until COVID, a lot of people coming to go to concerts at DTE, and just depending on who's coming, the age range goes up and down. And then a lot of people are coming, like I've gotten a ton of inquiries and bookings for this fall, whole entire families coming and renting all 4 spaces because they're coming for a family wedding that's in the Holly area. So, you're going to have your younger groups and then your older groups as well. So it really changes. If I'm being totally honest, you have New Year's Eve, you have more of the holidays, you're probably getting a little bit more of the younger crowd. But it totally varies, and it's pretty cyclical.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Jenny, we've also hosted a number of people that work in the area that want close proximity.
Oh, yeah.
So Renaissance Festival workers will see, a number of the neighbors have had family reunions, and they'll have their family stay at our farm. One of your members off of your, Bob had given me her number. I don't recall her last name, but I believe her first name was Gina. I just spoke to her, and she had mentioned, oh, my family came into town and stayed at your location, which I thought was really interesting.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, that's right. Thank you, Bob. And she had mentioned that she has an Airbnb property, but couldn't host all of her family because it's a large family. So she had them stay at our property. So we've just had a really good experience with it so far. It's Airbnbs are very interesting in that they're kind of filling a gap. When COVID hit, people weren't super interested in going to a hotel because of the mixing of people and the inability to kind of keep yourself socially distant. But our Airbnbs during that time were absolutely booming. And it was a combination of people that needed to get out. And then there was a large number of people that came and rented for maybe a month or two at a time that were very interested in just escaping COVID, escaping from New York City, escaping from some of these high population areas and just coming to the country. And so we thought, COVID would absolutely decimate our business, but it's actually doubled it, which is
Wow.
a very interesting development. So I think more and more people are going to travel this way. Yeah, we're excited.
I think, as I mentioned too, we're getting a lot more people who are coming from a shorter distance, just southern Oakland County. I think because with COVID, they don't want to go further away. They want to pack their own groceries. They want to come here. They want to stay. I kind of forgot another demographic that we've had quite a few of. We've actually quite a few professors from like University of Michigan. I had someone come from Albion who said, I just need to get away and I just need to write for a week. I want some peace. I want some quiet. So it really varies who we're having come.
Yeah.
Can I ask a question? Sorry, is there another planning commissioner who had a question first?
Go ahead.
I'm probably getting ahead of myself, but I'm the planning consultant here. So my first thought when I have dealt with this in other communities is parking. So if you were to start having small events, and I don't know how you categorize that, 50 people or less, I don't know what number you have in mind, but you have an idea of where on the property you would be providing parking? Would you be paving it or leaving it gravel? And I guess I'm just speaking on behalf of the residents because I know that's going to be the number one thing that they're going to come out and say is traffic.
Sure. Yeah. So we've talked about this internally and we've had a couple of discussions about it. So the south end of the property is what was used for parking initially during the time that it was K Farms. And that part of the property has seen, it's grass, it's a grass field. So it's not like it's a paved field, but there's trees kind of surrounding it. So it wouldn't be like you would see, tons of cars parked from Bird Road. But that would be where it is. And right now we have capacity for over 100 cars in that location for parking. We also have a plan for how we would direct traffic because of the 3 entrances. We would likely bring the cars in through the south entrance and then let the cars go back out through the north entrance. That way, avoiding that intersection at Bird, where Bird kind of curves over to the right. And so, if they're leaving on the north side, they're really just hitting that short stretch of Bird Road and getting to Grange Hall Road and not really tearing up the road too much. Okay. Otherwise, they got to go through the glass road corridor there. And we've even talked about if we have a lot of traffic, let's say that we might consider, for example, hiring the road. What is it called? The scraper or the
Grader.
Yeah, the road grader and paying for the road to be regraded from time to time during our busy season, if that is a concern to our neighbors. I don't know that we're going to have enough traffic to where it's going to really make a big impact there. But those are things that we've thought about in terms of mitigating some of those concerns.
Yeah, that was, Michelle, that's exactly where I was going. The three thoughts I had were parking, septic system, and nighttime lighting, and how that would affect neighbors. I'm sure those are all things you're wrestling with.
Yeah, and Neil, thank you for your question. So from a lighting standpoint, I'll tell you what we're thinking about. Right now, it's pretty dark there all the time, and when it gets dark, it's almost impossible to see anything. So we're looking at putting some decorative lights on the roadside on Bird Road on the east side of the farm along the fence, as well as on the south side of the farm to just give us a little bit more lighting, just so it's not so dark all the time. In terms of event lighting, you'll see that the location where I marked our wedding tent or wedding barn, future kind of facility, whatever that is, it's actually a piece of land where there used to be a barn that had collapsed a couple years ago, and the barn sits quite a bit below grade. So there's the outdoor riding arenas are up here. This is down here, and then the lake is down here. So it's essentially 3 levels. If we put a tent there, you probably wouldn't even be able to see it from the road. Mm-hmm. And we chose that location because it's the farthest location from any neighbor. It's over 500 feet from the east end of the property. It's over 600 feet from the south end of the property. And really it's right near the lake there. So that's an area where we feel like it's going to be least disruptive to the rest of the neighbors. We'll probably have the farthest of it's the best insulated when it comes to sound, so that we don't disturb other neighbors, especially on a weekend or something like that. And we've even considered self-imposing restrictions on ourselves, such as lights out after a certain hour on the weekends, or lights out after a certain hour on the weeknights, to make sure that we continue to be a good neighbor to our neighbors, and that they don't complain to you about noise violations and things of that nature. So we're really trying to, wherever possible, think about how do we do this in a way that is least disruptive to the community, but allows us, again, to kind of bring that facility back to life. I could tell you from driving up and down Bird Road for years, because I grew up in this area. My family moved out here when I was just going away to college. And I used to love watching the horse shows in there. I mean, there was, it seemed so vibrant, and it's been kind of dead since. And I think that's just unfortunate. So we want to bring some events back to it. And horses will be back there soon. So you'll be able to, you'll see girls riding around all over the place as part of the equestrian team. But I think the weddings would be a really nice touch. These are charming events. They're not something that is a major nuisance. And again, because we've got a professional team managing this, and our reputation is on the line, keep in mind with Airbnb that ratings are your life and death on Airbnb. We need to preserve our good name, and therefore we can't do anything that would tarnish that in any way.
So this is a test to see how old everybody is on this call. So immediately north of the property was the Wildwood Inn, where there's currently houses. So who you guys remember the Wildwood Inn?
I live next door to that house.
Yeah.
It's right over there. I live on
that was the wild place. All the youngsters went. It was a bar, pool, pool tables and bands and stuff. So that road has seen an entertainment venue.
Jenny, was that rougher or less rough than what's that place? The Boat Bar.
Rougher.
The Wildwood Inn used to be home to the Purple Gang in Prohibition days.
Oh, I see. Okay.
Oh, the Purple Gang,
yeah. I don't know. The Boat Bar is pretty rough, so I don't know. That sounds pretty funny. So
they had their clubhouse over on Wolf Road, didn't they? That's what I heard.
Oh, maybe. I I've been to the boat bar, and I've been here since I was 4 years old. And I've been to the boat bar, I think 3 times, and I was at the Wildwood Inn, I think twice, so.
Yeah, yeah,
They're both pretty, in my opinion, pretty rough places, so.
yeah, yeah. So, well, good.
Do we have any other questions from the commission
Yeah.
members?
Yeah, it's Jim. I just want to say, I went dark on you guys. I heard everything. I just didn't want to eat my dinner in front of everybody. So Carl, I heard everything you said, Carl.
Oh, sounds good. Thank you, Jim. Thank you.
Well, I live right up the street from your farm, and I miss the horses not being there.
Yes,
I used to take my grandkids down there to feed carrots to the horses when they were little.
yes, yes.
The only thing I'm concerned about is traffic
Mhm.
back and forth in front of my house and all the dust. I mean, there's enough dust already.
Yeah.
That's my only concern, and the parking, and you addressed that.
Okay, thank you, David. I mean, the one thing I'll tell you about having horses there again is, so the plan would be, I think Bloomfield Hills has over 20 different riders, 20 different horses. So they're going to be out in Main 1, Main 2 pastures, which are the north pastures that you see. They'll also be on the south pasture where they're going to be riding in the outdoor arenas. And then the winter time, they'll be using the indoor arena. So you'll be able to go back out there and see the horses whenever you'd like. We are hoping that sometime this summer, COVID permitting, that we can host an event for the neighborhood and just invite the neighbors over, right? So that you guys can see what we've got going on, and yeah, we can have some fun together. So just look for that invitation in the mail in the next couple of days.
Carl, that's a good point, and that's something I wanted to bring up. We've managed other projects with other people, and it's the same challenges, right? Traffic, lighting, noise,
Yes,
et cetera. And one, I appreciate your plan. I appreciate you bringing it to us in advance and getting us informed. And the key thing there is staying close with your neighbors, right? Happy neighbors when it comes time to do things that we need to do to support the project makes our job a lot easier. And it really feels like it's within what the Planning Commission and the plans we have for the township. It seems to be a nice fit. So happy neighbors make our job easy as well.
Sounds good. And again, the invitation is out there. So we're hoping to wait maybe a month or two, because summertime should be the farm right now is a little bit, weathered from the winter. But in the summer, hopefully, Jenny, when you'll be back from Florida, and when we, when it looks beautiful out there, we'd love to have your team come out and see the location. That way we can give you a little bit more details as to, okay, here's where the parking would be. Here's where we're thinking about putting up the tent or the event, the greenhouse. We're also working with the fire department on things like, what happens if we have a fire, right? So we're looking at sprinkler systems within the facility, right? We're doing a pretty large rehab now of the barns to the south of the property. So you'll see that those will get a new paint job on them sometime this year or early next year. So it should continue to get nicer over time, and you'll see some well-deserved and kind of improvements that are going to be coming. But all of this really hinges on the ability for us to create a sustainable plan that makes sense financially. And the one thing that I'll tell you that every other owner of that place has done is that they've all gotten themselves a little overly extended. And so the situation that happened with the previous owner wasn't that they didn't, have good intentions. It was that it was too much too quickly, and they didn't manage the growth. And so in our estimation, we really have to do this in a way that is slow and kind of methodical, and to where we can, we don't get in trouble with our lender. We don't get in trouble with our neighbors. We don't do anything that would kind of kill the magic of that place.
Carl, I want to kind of piggyback on what Neil said. A few years ago, and there was a group, and actually I think they lived on Brant Road. Bob will have to jump in here. But for a couple of years, they had something called, I believe, the Flatlander Games, which was kind of a big party, and they had games.
I heard this. Yeah.
And it was poorly orchestrated. Neighbors couldn't wait to shut it down. They lied to the planning commission about their intentions. So I think you're being proactive about all this. Adds a ton of credibility to your initiative. So I'm seconding what Neil said. I think this is great.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you. Appreciate it.
Carl, I was just going to mention, I kind of didn't really give my background. I'm an event planner by trade. I don't know if any of you remember when the Super Bowl was in Detroit, and what was that, 2006? Was it 6 or 5? You attended. Well,
the first one back in the 90s.
In the 90s. Okay. So there's also a very large event that used to be in Pontiac that moved to Royal Oak called Art Beats and Eats. If any of you are familiar with that event. So I used to work directly with the creator of that event, Jonathan Witt. And I worked on the Super Bowl event when that happened. So I have a lot of experience having to work within the cities. There's a lot that you have to do. There's a lot of ordinances, that sort of thing. So I've also put on many weddings, large, small, that sort of thing. So, I'm excited to kind of manage more on the event side, but just knowing that, as Carl said, we are much more excited to ask for permission than ask for forgiveness, at the end. So, in addition to the other 2 team members that we, showed pictures for you of Megan and Holly, I directly will be the one that's working on the event.
I was going to say that it was nice that you showed us other properties that you manage also. They're very nice properties, and you have experience in rehabbing, like the Mill Pond Bed and Breakfast.
Yes.
I'm confident you'll be a good neighbor.
Yes. Mill Pond and the working within the village is challenging. The village of Clarkston isn't known for its accepting of outsiders all the time. And so Mill Pond's been a little bit more of a challenge for us, but I can tell you that with Mill Pond in particular, we've had a very smooth experience so far. The inside of Mill Pond's been completely redone, and that house is from 1871. So it was a very challenging project when we went in and took over that space. The owner sold it to us because we told her that we would preserve what it is, right? Many people wanted to take it and do something different with it entirely. And so we're not interested in kind of like stepping over and just bulldozing an iconic location. And we think that that's, it's just kind of the tragedy of when people come in and just look at the dollar and only focus on that. So Mill Pond is very much like Narren Farms, except it doesn't have the large kind of location. It's more of a kind of a downtown, small town feel. But the same team that works on Mill Pond is the team that works on Narren Farms. We have a cleaning team. We have a maintenance crew that comes out there and does the maintenance on it. It's the same exact team that works on those 2 projects. So they're really well versed. This is their full-time job. So they're full-time employees. They're not independent contractors where they kind of come and go. And we feel like, there's enough interest there at this point where we need to pay a lot of close attention to it, because this is a very good property and it's got a lot of potential.
Oh, good. Thank you for that.
Yeah.
Into your company.
Sure. Absolutely. Did you, go ahead.
I was gonna say, I have a couple of comments that I want to make, but I want to make sure before I do that any of the other commission members, if they want to ask any questions, Jeff or Jenny, if you have anything you want to say or add to it before I make my comments.
Actually, I do have a question. Just Carl, you had mentioned that Narren Farms has a Superhost rating on Airbnb.
Yeah.
Just with regard to that, 2 questions actually. Number 1, how do you acquire that rating or that status? And number 2, is it something that derives from customer feedback, or is it something that you can acquire? Is there a price for that rating that you can, you can actually purchase a certain rating through the website, or how is that status attained?
Do you want me to speak to that, Carl?
Yeah, please go ahead. Yeah.
It is not something that you can purchase. It is 100% customer feedback as well as your interaction with the guest. I'm trying to remember the exact main steps, but one is you must maintain a 4.8 star review, and it's a 5-point scale. So there's very little wiggle room for being perfect. It's also your response rate. So you have to respond to any new inquiries and then continual guests within 24 hours. Our response rate, I believe the average is 1.5 hours. So this is whenever someone has a request who's not necessarily even there yet, we try and respond as quick as possible. And in the scaling system, it's not like, hey, we just give you a 5-star review. When a guest actually rates you on Airbnb, there's like 20 different sections where they rate you up to 5 stars. So you can guess there's many areas to mess up. So the fact that we actually have a 4.9 star rating average across all 4 of ours, which is pretty great for having 4. And so we have a 96% response rate, I believe, out of 100. And then it's also just the number of guests. So you have to have a continually high number of guests. And, anytime that someone messages me in the middle of the night, if I miss that, I'm getting a message from Airbnb, hey, you want to make sure that you respond. So, they want you to keep it as well, but it is something that we had to earn. You were not able to purchase it.
Gotcha. Thank you.
And one thing that you cannot get it until you have a certain number of guests that have stayed with you also. So I think it's the first 30 guests on the property. It can't be one of these things where you're renting it out like once every couple of months and it's your second home or a vacation property. You're really doing this professionally. So Superhosts typically around the world, you'll see that they are very organized, very sophisticated. They're not just renting out a room, they're renting out typically a whole house. And just to give you an example, we're running a hospitality business. So think of this very much like a high-end hotel. When you come to one of our Airbnbs, you're going to have a bottle of wine waiting for you. You're going to have like cheese and crackers, and we're going to know why you're there. We might bring in something to really make your stay extra special. If we know you're on an anniversary or you're a honeymooner, we'll have something special for you as well. So it's not just a place to stay. It has to hit kind of all the marks of what you would expect, right? And so surprisingly, I can tell you that the people that have come are just really, they're very much focused on kind of that immersive experience, and that's why they come. They like that. They don't want to be in a hotel.
Very good.
I would just like to say that I have recently stayed at an Airbnb in January in Oklahoma City. We were attending a beef show, and we're planning on doing it again in June. And the experience was wonderful, and it's much nicer and better to have a whole home and have your family involved. So I having had this experience, find it to be very interesting and look forward to the opportunity of taking a tour of your facilities and possibly being a user when I have family events in the area.
Sounds good. Thank you, Jenny. Appreciate it.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, I think I can, reiterate what everyone has said, and that we really appreciate you coming tonight and sharing this with us, so we have an understanding. And absolutely, I think we will all be lined up, ready to take advantage of a field trip to view your property. So we thank you for the invitation.
Yeah.
We do, I think on the commission, get excited when we see people that want to invest in our community with a vision that embraces many of the principles that we're trying to maintain here. And that's, outdoor recreation, natural environment, and a family-friendly community where, we do try to get along with our neighbors and and do things accordingly. So on that, a couple of suggestions that I would give to you would be, as you get more and more involved in this, we do have ordinances on signs, signage. So you would want to just make sure, you apprise yourself of what those are. We have ordinances regarding lighting, so you would want to take a look and see what those are. One of the things that we often ask folks to do that are conducting some type of business next to residential is to look at screening through vegetation that you might be able to do. So I'm thinking of your event location, maybe start now planting some evergreens or something, just so that you can continue to enhance what screening you might have, what in addition to what's there naturally.
Yeah.
David, I'm curious, are you on Bird or you're on
About
Bird?
4 or 5 houses north of the farm.
Okay, because when you talk about south, so I'm over on Bald Eagle Lake Road, and I often take Bird over to Grange Hall, Glass and Bird, that section there. And that curve right before your south entrance is quite difficult.
Yeah.
So when you're talking about using a south entrance for events, I'm thinking, well, how are you going to get the people there, right? Unless they come down Bird, and because if they're coming from another direction, from M15, the Glass Road, and then onto the dirt. So I just, I think there's definitely some things there that would need to be worked out traffic wise and stuff. I think that the community would embrace, the vision that you have. It really is just what kind of an impact it's going to have on the surrounding neighbor. So,
Sure.
That'll be the things that we consider. And then, my comments to the commissioners are, I think it was Jim, you had brought up some prior experiences that we've had in our community with event planning where it's gone bad. And so, we as a commission want to think about, as we go forward, how we do this with a special use permit. Are we going to look at, there needs to be a certain amount of acreage, before you can have a certain amount of people, what, if anything, would we have for parking and lighting, if it is a special use, and temporary structures versus permanent structures, blah, 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 blah. So, those are things that, we're going to have to, kind of wrestle amongst ourselves. I think we're all very supportive of your vision.
Sure.
Look forward to having that. But we'll need to look at the mechanisms that we use to try to facilitate that.
And Jenny, when we talked to Bob and his team about this, they seem to think that rather than trying to do an ordinance or a different type of zoning, which might open up kind of this Pandora's box of everybody wanting to do this and then, having to narrowly tailor it. They felt very much like a special use permit might be a better mechanism that has to be renewed from time to time. So we have a way of, if it doesn't work out, we would lose our special use permit. But I've noticed that both the Renaissance Festival and the Haunted House use special use permits very successfully as seasonal businesses. And I wonder if that might be the better mechanism rather than some kind of an ordinance or I don't know. But if you could advise us as to where your thoughts are on this, what you would prefer to see, that would help guide our thinking around what we might request. Right. And what self-imposed restrictions we would put on ourselves to make sure that we're a good neighbor. Yeah,
I think special use permit is probably the more appropriate way to go. Okay. But that also for us, not you. Yeah. I don't want that to be opening the Pandora's box for everyone's like, hey, I want a special use permit. You gave him one, So we just need to make sure we're comfortable with why and how and.
Okay.
But I do think that'll be the appropriate way.
Okay, thank you. And thank you for your time tonight. We didn't want to take up all your meeting time, but we appreciate all the questions and you giving us the time. So we'll be in touch when we're ready for the field trip.
Great job.
Super.
Sounds good.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you all
All right,
so
thanks.
much.
Yeah, have
Thanks,
a great.
everyone.
Bye.
All right, so I don't believe we have any other public on the call tonight, so shouldn't be any public comments, and we can go into talking about the master plan, which we consider to be the final draft. It's had several drafts, but we think this is the final one. So well, I don't want to preclude anybody an opportunity to voice their thoughts. I am hoping that any additional edits to this document is primarily grammar or, spelling type things versus, I don't like the second section. I think it needs to be rewritten, type of a feedback. So because we spent a lot of time on it and I really don't know if I could read it again one more time. So,
It is very well written. It's a great document.
Yeah,
One more time, we're going into the woods and shoot ourselves.
I have to give Michelle a lot of credit. I love Ben and he really carried this football far. But Michelle really got it over the goalpost. She did a great job of putting this together with the graphs and the visuals, and she did a very, very nice job.
Yep.
And so, Michelle, I'll have you guide us a little bit here, but I would suggest that as we take our input regarding edits and grammar and sentence structure, that people just email that to you directly and let you consolidate that.
Well, I do in general agree with that idea unless there are several people with several things they want to send. It's easier for me if it's all consolidated on one document, just in case one person says you should cross this out and the other person says the complete opposite. So it helps kind of mitigate any maybe differences in opinion, but if they really are just a comma here and a comma there, feel free
Michelle,
to email me.
would it help if they sent whatever comments they have in the next, 1 week time frame to Danielle, and she'll assemble them and give them to you at once then? Would that help?
That would be great.
Okay, so just so we're all agreeable, does everybody think 1 week is enough time? Because we've been beating this to death.
Yep. My list is short and my comments are very small. So it's like you're saying, Michelle, it's just a little dot here. It's small stuff, nothing substantive. So.
Okay. Well, I guess, does anyone else have anything that they want to bring up about the plan?
Pages 49 on are blank. Are they supposed to be?
Yeah, that's the end of the plan. That's where the appendix will go.
Okay, thank you.
Sure. So if there aren't any like burning questions or like Jenny was saying, I want you to rewrite this whole section. If nobody has anything in that regard, then I would like to steer us all to the action plan. So that would be starting on page 47. So this is really the culmination of all of the research and community engagement and thinking through planning best practices. Once we have all of that, it's time to figure out, well, what do we do with that? Who's going to do it? And in what type of time frame? So I divided these actions up into major categories. So the first one would be corridors and nodes. So I'll start there. And that's kind of the crux of this plan because a lot of this has to do with sort of guiding development to Dixie Highway. So you can see that's the first one is develop an overlay district. We're already working on that. That's probably on next meeting's agenda. So that's largely written. It just needs more review from you all. So we can not quite, but almost check that one off. That's why the time frame there says 1. 1 is we're getting it done quickly, more quickly than the others. Yes,
Michelle, one thing here, and this it's in this section. I'm not sure where it goes, but and we have not talked to, I don't think we've talked about this with you. But one of the discussions we had with Ben, and I'd forgotten about it, quite frankly, is that we talked about having some sort of commission or committee where we would interact with our neighbors to the north and south, Springfield and Grand Blanc, as we worked on that corridor, just to try to make sure we had some blending and some communication with them. Not that it's a permanent body, but that more of a communication device to zero in on that. First, I know we distribute our master plan to other communities, but this would be to typically, meet and have some, because we want to have some synergies on our borders with them.
Yeah.
And so it was a way to do that. And I didn't really see that here, and I thought maybe it could be a part of it's going to take longer than
Jenny,
yeah.
if I can, I've talked to George Cullis and Holly numerous times about this, and he has agreed that once we finish the overlay district, I think he's going to take it verbatim and put it into his master plan.
Who's
And
this, Bob?
George Cullis, the supervisor in Holly, he's just waiting for our overlay district to incorporate those same qualities in there. And ours is really kind of heavily driven off of some early meetings we had with Springfield. So I think by virtue of doing that, along with the requirement from the county planning department to send it to the surrounding communities for comment, I think we'll kind of have that.
Okay.
Okay, should I remove that as a separate action?
Could we just, I'd say, like to have it worded so it's part of this initial one, as we do the
okay.
overlay, it's a communication with,
Yeah, sure.
or sharing of, or however you want to word that.
Yep. No problem. Okay. The other two I sort of inherited. They were written here already. So I want to see where you guys still stand on this, but I have a feeling this sort of goes with the recreational mecca that you guys are creating. So developing a vehicle and bicycle pedestrian strategy for Dixie Highway overlay. So has that been was that in discussion with Ben as well?
Yeah, this, and just as a update for those that maybe weren't involved in this, when we had the consultant that came, I can't think of his name right now.
Dan Marriott?
Yeah, Dan. He made the observation, which I thought was great, is he said, you just don't have an opportunity for any pedestrian or bicycle traffic. And so, he had suggested for, like, say somebody wanted to bike to a restaurant and they're, down at the campground, we just don't offer for an outdoor recreational venue. We don't offer that type of transportation, walking or biking, to anything. So it was his suggestion. I think it's a great one, that particularly as we look at the development along Dixie Highway, that we have, and not on the edge of the road, but literally have some designated, off-road, pedestrian or bicycle paths, so people can, travel around a bit.
Okay.
So we now have Bob, we're focusing on Bob. Is that because Bob wants to say something?
Oh, that Lynn just thought I would.
Oh.
I have a question about
Most generic of discussions with planning department along the way in the county, that they long-term would like to see a trail really all the way from over by 24 and Fenton, getting into Ortonville. And we have had only the most preliminary of discussions with the Iron Bell Trail people, which I don't even know if the thing's still going, but Clarkston would like to take their trail, since they can't come up through Brandon, and cut over to Dixie, which is a great idea. But I'm being honest with you. I think the group that's working on it is so disorganized at checklist items that it never seems to move forward. So I agree. What you might want to value in our own master plan then is whether or not we want to require somebody that's in our Dixie overlay to put in some of those facilities for bikes or walking trails, because that I think we could control through the overlay district. And maybe if we do that, it would eventually spur the people down in Clarkston to come up to meet us, which is what they want to do, and then join us north of Holly, going back into Genesee County where there's some trails. So I think trying to get us all together, I've been on these meetings for 3 or 4 years, they never move anywhere. So the easier way to get is probably to say, if we think that's a valued principle, to put it in our overlay requirements for the new businesses that would move in and help actually get the thing facilitated that way.
Okay, so that's sort of getting more at point 3. Would it be easier if I share my screen?
Sure.
I mean, I have them printed off, but maybe if you do.
It looks like it's letting me, so.
Yeah.
Okay.
Just a comment I want to make on that, to add to what Bob said, and you know, this is my opinion, and so others may have different opinions. But one of the benefits I think we should try to capitalize on as we bring people in for the development of Dixie Highway, not bring them in, but as they come to us and want development, we should look to garner through that benefits for the community. And so, you know, getting, you know, sidewalks put in, you know, so there can be pedestrian and bike traffic or whatever. I think we should do that now and not wait till they come in and then try to figure out, okay, how are we going to fund it and how are we going to get it in there? But, you know, that's, I think, one of the biggest benefits we can give our community right now is start that planning and have it happen as we do the growth.
That's pretty common, isn't it, with new development, that you can make part of getting the zoning, you've got to put in X number of feet of sidewalk or contribute to a fund that will do that.
Yes.
And you look at it from our standpoint, I mean, with the Dixie corridor, we're looking at pretty much a straight line, right? I mean, you could draw that from, like you say, the parks all the way up past the ORV park and north of there. And if we put restaurants and things in, ours is pretty easy, right? And then if Holly wants to tie into that or whatnot, we've pretty much done our part.
Yep.
So I agree, and that is a common standard, but as we know, development doesn't happen. It happens in a staggered timeline. So you can only require that they build a sidewalk that's on their parcel. So while it's better than not having anything, you know, what will happen is you'll have a stretch of sidewalk in front of someone's parcel. And then if the next parcel is undeveloped, there'll be nothing. Maybe the next one's undeveloped. Maybe the next one, there's a development, there'll be a sidewalk. So it's going to be a little patchy, but the idea, you know, was over the long term, it could get filled in without having to use public dollars, or it will reduce how much public dollars you need if you just want to fill in those gaps.
And if we at least have the plan, so we know where we would want the sidewalk, as we go through and review site plans, we could say, hey, don't forget you're putting in a 5-foot, 6-foot wide sidewalk through here, and that's what we're requiring.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so it looks like then I could probably, are you guys still seeing my screen?
Yeah.
Yes.
Oh, okay. That I could probably remove this, because what we're saying is we want to do it more by our own, on our own terms. Something that's under our control is what we have in our own ordinance. So maybe we remove this, and in fact this can probably be combined, because these standards, you know, including bicycle parking, sidewalks, these can all be included here in the overlay. So does that?
I think I agree with including bicycle parking standards, reduced parking spaces, the number 3, in joining that up with the first one. For the second one, I think that might be you leave it but have it as a category C, knowing that as we do a more comprehensive, that's long-term and it's with other entities, and you know, but there's things we can do ourselves with the overlay district.
Okay. I'm okay with that because that is a longer term process. Okay, the next item here is in the master plan, we identified certain nodes where we know that when development comes to the township that it's going to focus on Dixie Highway. And so there are some major intersections where we would target or concentrate certain development. So we pulled out Austin Corners, Dixie Highway and Grange Hall Road, and then Dixie Highway and is it Laring or Lawring? Laring. So yeah, if we concentrate development there, we're creating nodes and we're making sure that it's not, they're more identifiable, they're more recognizable, they're hubs, they're centers, and they're not sort of sprawling. That is one thing that's in the master plan that I wanted to talk to you all about.
So just sort of a picky thing, but I don't know that many people, if you say, oh yeah, over at Austin Corners, that they even know where that is.
Yeah.
I barely know, and I've lived here my whole life. I think,
I don't know where it
you know,
is.
that was something from the 1800s, you know.
Okay, where is it?
I didn't
let
know
me-
until I looked at the.
Alex's
map
gas
you
station.
have on the document.
Yeah, I mean, I know where it is, but only because I've had to look it up. It's like, what the heck are they talking about?
Okay.
You know, if I might throw in, one of the things we talked about when those people were doing the historic route of Dixie Highway was that at some point in time, we might want to take some township dollars and buy some of those brass looking historic markers with a description of some of those features and help build that identity for the Dixie Byway. And, you know, you could put one down on the corner there that says this is Austin Corners from whenever it was. The historian at the county would help us come up with the right kind of phrases. But I think that's part of what you do when you build that walkway or bicycle path to make it more interesting and get people to want to tie to it, is put some periodic markers along the way where there is something that frankly most of us don't remember because it's older than even I am. Okay.
Wow.
That's old.
It's older than dirt.
So this is the map that's showing where these nodes are. This one is the most obvious to me, Dixie Highway and Grange. These other two, I'm running past you as just they're major intersections, but they don't necessarily, if those don't, as people who live there, ring true as a place that's prime for development, we don't have to include them. So I have a little description about them here, and then these are kind of where we would be targeting growth. And like Bob said, I do have an action item in there about historic preservation, which we'll get to, but this could tie into that as well.
What page are you on?
Now I'm on page 35.
Okay.
So number 2 right here, Dixie Highway and Grange Hall. When I looked into that, I did talk to the county historian. This was a heritage site. I think it's from 1870. There used to be a historic hotel. It was called Groveland Corners. I think all of it's gone. I don't think there's anything remaining, but
There's some steps to the hotel, I think, or something.
Okay.
Yeah.
but it's still a, yeah, it could be along this trail. If these other two had more, she didn't mention these, but if they had any historic reference, then we could kind of link these together.
So number 3 would be Austin Corners.
Yes.
Okay.
And
Yeah,
really,
and
I
that-
just picked these because that's where there already is development. And when we get to this number 2, we're kind of thinking of that would be like the main hub, more like a village hub. This is where that makes the most sense to create that.
Yeah, and I think, 1 and 3 really are getting more towards our boundaries on the corridor. So I think those are fine to, there'll be ones that we might, work with our surrounding neighbors, but I have no idea what Austin Corners was.
Okay. Is it okay to keep it now? Or what do you guys?
I think we keep it. We just probably should figure out what it was.
I agree. When you look at, down the road for focus, the Grange Hall, Dixie intersection is probably the big opportunity.
Yeah. I agree.
Okay. So the other corridor we've talked less about, but I think maybe it started as a bigger topic with you guys and Ben, and maybe has trailed off where we've decided now that Dixie Highway is going to be the main focus, but there was some discussion here about M15 and what to do with that. So there was an action here, permit greater variety of uses along M15. Even that it says in the base zone, because there was originally a separate overlay for this. So that needs to be corrected, but does this still sound like the direction that you all want to go in? Or do we want to keep it? From what I can see, there's pretty limited development.
What distance of M15's in Groveland? Like a mile and a half?
It's 1.7 miles,
Yeah,
but part of it's going by north of Danny Kellemeyer's farm, and that's all wetland floodplain up there between Kellemeyer's farm and Berry Bedrock.
yeah. My opinion is at that point, you're just driving M15, right? But
Yes.
You take Dixie and Grange Hall, okay, you're by the parks, you're by the ORV, that's Groveland. That's what people think of when they think Groveland.
So this
I
might be
agree
a
with-
step for something much further down the line once Dixie Highway is fully developed and there's more development pressure, you might have to move to another corridor, but that's possibly decades in the future.
Yeah, I agree with C and, C priority and a 3 time frame. I don't know that I would, so we can say permit greater variety of uses. I'm okay with that. Just know that that's not anything that's going to be on our horizon for quite a while.
Right. Okay. So here's the next one, is about developing a historic commission to identify historic properties along the corridors and apply for the community assessment program. That's pretty specific. It could just say, work with the county, since you guys do have an amazing historian on staff. But the master plan does make a point that if this is important, if the history of the township is important, that you have to dedicate some sort of resources to it. It might not be financial, but I mean, a historic commission, similar to a planning commission, they're meeting once every other month. They're doing the work on liaising with the county, maybe ordering the plaques, figuring out what to write on the plaques, that kind of thing. If there's not a staff person dedicated to that, then this is an alternative.
Bob, how do you feel about that as far as staffing that?
Okay, one of the things we had done at the beginning and haven't done since then was had the resident that lives in the area and makes those quilts that we put on Fire Station 1 on Dixie. We wanted to promote that all along there, because that's one of the things apparently people in the state and then throughout the country do, is drive around looking for those quilt trails. And we only have the 2 that we put up on our building to start it. But when some of these parcels get developed, like the Nick's old farm and our township property, I think it's worthwhile to put a few more of them. And I had talked to the ORV folks at the county about maybe putting one there. We need to get some of those. Part of that builds that historic image for the Dixie, I think. So maybe somewhere in that reference to a historic committee, we could at least make mention that we reference the desire to add additional quilts along the Dixie byway.
Okay, so that'd be another task for the historic commission to coordinate.
And if we start with a commission, that's the easiest thing to pick on, to go to a couple of places and try and get them to add on to it, because it's a low cost item and it starts to build identity. Remember, the other part we had talked about was, and I don't know when this happens because it's a bureaucratic nightmare, but trying to get consumers power to let us wrap white and red stripes on some of the poles along the Dixie byway, because that was the historical method for marking the Dixie highway. And the problem is you got to go through hoops to try and get somebody that's at the right level in consumers that will let you do it, because they start worrying about whether or not painting the poles going to make it rot in 1,000 years or something, So we, it might not be wraps on the poles. We said it might be banners hanging on them, but if we want to build that Dixie byway identity, we have to do something that's relatively inexpensive and easy to identify, so that people start saying, why are all the poles out here got banners on them that are red and white with an H on them? Well, that's the Dixie Highway, or DH, I think it is. And why do they have these quilts there? That I know it may seem small, but we're not going to get somebody to build a brick walkway all the way through Groveland Township right away and make it the byway. We have to do something that starts that initiation talk with the people in the area.
Okay.
So when you look at this, Bob, I agree, with all you said, and I think it's an important thing to do. I think it'll really enhance, the Dixie byway. But she's looking at the party that would be involved would be the Board of Trustees. And I think it would also need the township staff to participate in this, don't you?
And it should have a couple of people. There are some people in this township, citizens, that are historian buffs, because they came to some of those presentations we had. And I think it would be good to actually have a couple of them kind of spearheading it, so we see what they think they want it.
Right.
You can give them some ideas, but they can run with it.
Mm-hmm. Okay. This last one, I think, should probably be moved to the residential. I'll bring it up now, but are there any other thoughts about strategies you'd like to see done on your corridors or on the nodes?
Yeah, I've got something for everybody. At one point, we had talked about perhaps a special designation for Grange Hall Road. Maybe something on the order, help me somebody with some of the signage you see, maybe not something called a heritage road, but there's certain road designations. And I thought it might give us some leverage to, as the main corridor, as I view it, through the township, east-west corridor, at least for sure, give us some leverage to keep it up. Come on, somebody, refresh my memory on this. I know we talked about it.
Well, that's where we met early on with the county and their trails system people. We said they eventually want to go from Fenton all the way down Grange Hall Road to the village of Ortonville. So unless I'm misunderstanding it, Jim, I think that's, again, something that a heritage group that would work on the Dixie byway could meet with the same folks at the county and say, how do we get the idea of promoting this trail in? Because the part of it that goes by the township's property would be easiest for us to implement the beginning of that system. And ultimately, one of the discussions early on was with possibly modifying the viaduct at 101 so that there was a pedestrian crossing to get to the other side that would allow people like that want to go on the mountain bike trails on the other side of the freeway to have an easy way to get from the development in Groveland Township, ride down over the viaduct without getting killed, and get into that extensive trail system that's just on the other side of the freeway.
Bob, I just looked it up. It was a scenic byway, I think was.
Oh, okay.
In my mind.
That reference was going down part of Dixie Highway in Groveland where you pass the lake and all that over by Ruth's house, that there were some opportunities there from that consultant they hired that said you could make a pull-off area or two where people could take advantage of the scenic view of a couple of the lakes and stuff along the way. That's what that reference was to.
Okay.
Is that specific language you want added here?
Well, I think that would be something for us to discuss. Maybe I'm in touch with my inner snob on this, but sometimes I get upset with our neighbors in the major corridor having a bunch of junk outside, and if it gave us more enforcement or some leverage, I'd be for it.
So is the action would be to create, you want this to be a scenic bypass, Dixie Highway?
Well, this is just my starting the conversation. if I'm not getting a fair amount of feedback from my mates over here, then I can easily let it drop. How's that?
Well, Jim, I'll support you on that. You know, I live on Grange Hall, and Robin and I spend a lot of time on our front porch in the summers, and you know, we like old cars and whatnot, and we watch the cruisers come by. You watch the motorcycle guys come by in big groups, and you know, they come up M15, they come across Grange Hall, and then they go back down on Dixie. And all summer long, it's kind of a popular route. And if it were more dressed up or had a destination place to stop and stretch your legs and look at a lake and then continue on your ride, like I say, we see it all summer long, and you know, we're out in our cars doing the same thing. So you give us an excuse to go drive somewhere and look at something, and we'll do it.
I guess I agree with the comments you guys are making. I'm just looking at procedurally, you know, like with Michelle, but I think that it's really part of our first action item here. And it's more like when we talk about landscaping, screening, signage, parking, we also look at scenic, because if I recall correctly, when we had this discussion when Dan was here, it's to highlight those areas within the Dixie Highway corridor that we wanted to be the scenic overlooks, or, you know, accentuate that.
Your recollection's correct.
Yeah.
But
And so-
just to be clear, we're talking about Grange Hall?
Well, yeah, right now I'm talking Dixie Highway. When we had this discussion with Dan Marriott, we were talking about Dixie Highway. And so I think we could accomplish this within the first action item by just adding language, you know, and scenic, you know, overlay or scenic overlooks, whatever, scenic, identifying scenic locations maybe. But then to add to that and say, well, are we going to do Grange Hall? I think we're going a little beyond what we had intended with this. Not to say that, I'm not saying it's a bad idea. It's just, I don't think we had envisioned that as part of this plan.
Michelle, let it drop. I'm fine with it.
I do think we add some language in the first bullet point that we definitely call it out, because we did want to the extent, you know, we've got a beautiful view of the lakes, right, from Dixie Highway. Dan had talked about having maybe a little turn off, you know, so you could do photographs or, you know, take a look at it. So, you know, I think there are some opportunities we do want to consider that. We don't want to lose that point as we go through the overlay district, you know, to identify those points. So I don't know if it's it's not like a node where you've identified it, but it maybe it needs to, I think we need to consider it in our overlay district.
So I made a note to identify, maybe it's identify and preserve scenic outlooks. Am I getting the?
Yeah, I think that's good. I mean, Jim, is that the point? I mean, you had something else you were trying to make?
You know, everyone, I chewed on it pretty hard just a second ago. I think what I worry about is I don't want to see our main road turn junky. And maybe the real vehicle to do that is not through here, but simply through enforcement through our code official.
Okay.
I think it probably through both. So, I mean, we want to try to make this Dixie Highway as beautiful as possible with our standards for landscaping, screening, signage. But then, yeah, enforcement is going to be important as well.
Okay.
Okay. So this last one here, I think it's because a lot of these larger parcels are on the main corridor that I put it here. But really my thought was, as I was going through and preparing for today, when I looked through and we look at the demographics and we look at the housing, you know, we do have an aging population. We do know that there's not enough senior housing in Groveland. We identify certain parcels for it. But really, if we want any sort of denser unit for a senior citizen and or medical facilities on the same site, the only option is a PD, and the PD has a minimum of 40 acres. And so in my experience, I've worked on a couple of these age in place zoning ordinances, and the two that I've experienced with were 8 acres and 10 acres. So I guess my only concern is when I say make requirements more inclusive is I'm just wondering if we are saying that we want specific kind of housing for seniors, how are we allowing for that in the zoning ordinance? So am I missing a step where if somebody wanted to build, say like slightly smaller or some attached units with like a medical facility on site, how could that get done in the township with the current standards?
I think the concern over the acreage parcel was that we have a lot of people in this township that own 10 or 20 acres. And I think we were afraid that if we made it less than 40, we might have people potentially in the interior of the township trying to get the same thing. And that's really not what we wanted. All of the discussions that we ever had with Ben relevant to senior housing was potentially trying to assimilate it down at the south end where there's a mining site now that when it's done would be an excellent site for some senior assisted living, and partially because it's closer to Clarkston and there's easy, convenient ways to get to medical facilities and stuff there in Clarkston from that end.
Is it this one? Can you see my screen that I'm pointing to?
Yeah, down there. Yep.
Okay, so that one we did zone in the future land use map as PD.
I mean, there could be some other places on Dixie, but I think we thought if we went over or under 40 acres, we might be enticing a lot of requests that we really didn't envision for a planned unit development. But at least that's my recollection of it.
Okay.
Yeah, and I'll be honest, Michelle, I'm not really understanding your question because I thought we had identified those areas, specifically the one that Bob had just pointed out at the south end. We said, we have those extractive, areas right now that as they get reclaimed, those would be opportunities, particularly the one in the south end, that we could look at that being, accommodating, a more senior living and perhaps some limited medical.
Right. I guess I'm just saying in my experience that the types, so we have this map here. These were the sites that were identified. I don't know if every single one of them is over 40 acres. Doesn't look like it. But I guess my only concern is the development that I've seen for those types of housing and facilities are much, much smaller than that. So for someone to buy 40 acres to build it, the ones I saw were on 8 and 10 acres.
But if you bought 40 acres, you might put some retail, typical retail on the frontage. You might put some medical offices in the middle, and you might put your, for lack of a better phrase, that they call granny stackers, in the back of the property, and fairly low level multi-story buildings for the seniors to live in. That's what I think we had envisioned the planned unit development in large part being used for. So even on the one property that you show on Grange Hall Road, where you get almost all the way over that, when you said you didn't think it was 40 acres, that one there, that's actually the southern piece of the Groveland Township 40-acre parcel. So I'm not sure why it's only colored like that, but now that you mention it, that whole square should probably be colored as a potential PUD, because that's where we thought we would put the retail on Grange Hall's frontage and maybe have tiered apartment kind of living coming down the slope towards the plateau that eventually meets the Kurtz Lake.
Yeah.
Okay. If you guys want to keep it that way, I'm happy to keep it at 40. I just think that there's been high demand for it for a long time. If you haven't seen any of those requests, I'd be curious why.
I would guess if it changes, we can modify this at an update, right? If that ends up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and I, maybe I'm not understanding because Michelle, I'm thinking with the planned development mixed use, it gives us the opportunity to dedicate on a 40-acre parcel, 8 acres for the senior
Yeah.
living and then, another 10 acres for some other use, right?
Yeah,
Am I
I'm
not-
just saying someone might not want to buy 40.
Oh, yeah. Well, tough rocks for them, huh?
Spoken like a chair. I like that.
Okay, so I'm gonna remove this. Okay, shall we move on to natural features, open space and recreation?
Yes.
And then there's only one other one. So then you guys tell me if there's any major things missed. I believe I inherited some of these, although I may have modified or added some, but develop a tree preservation ordinance to landmark trees to prevent clear cutting during construction. So, landmark trees, you would develop standards for how old it is or its caliper, if it's thick enough, just so that when someone develops, there's some thought put around either developing around them or figuring out how to replace them or marking trees that you want to preserve.
I think, Jenny, we had talked about that at one point in time, but we got lots of trees in Groveland Township.
If
8,000
we're-
acres of it.
Yeah, if we're talking about the overlay district, I can see that, but if we're talking about the entire, Groveland Township and having something, I don't even know how you'd enforce it, right?
Most people don't call us when they're cutting a tree down on their acreage. I
Yeah, and most
know.
people are mad when you cut them down, so.
Yeah.
We could do that for the overlay district, you think?
Good, if it doesn't interfere with safety hazards on it. Because a lot of the big trees, as you can see, like what they're doing on Barron Road now, a lot of those were the unsafe trees right on the edge of the road. Typically, those are the ones people may get upset, but they end up coming down. They did it on M15 at the cemetery when they had to take a whole bunch of those monster oak trees out right next to M15.
Well, and Oak Hill just recently when you paved the new area.
Problem for us, frankly, and I'm afraid that too many people would latch onto that and say, you can't cut my tree because this is the old oak tree from 1810 or something. And there's just a lot of trees out here on 8,000 acres that we can't touch. And most of the trees that we've seen removed, I don't think have been a result of overly aggressive property development. They've been an issue of getting rid of the trees that are too close to the edge of the road for safety reasons.
Well, and I think this might go to, some of the discussion within the master plan where it talks about 40%, coverage as the target, and we're at 48%. And so, we just need to make sure that we're preserving it. So, I agree with that. But I don't want to get to a point where if somebody buys, a 5-acre parcel and they want to clear 2 acres of it, of trees, that we're going to go in and say, no, you can't take that one and you can't take that one.
Right. Just to be clear, though, it'd only be for landmark trees. So it's not any tree, but it's like, say the tree was 300 years old and something like that. So you would have criteria.
I find that unlikely to be a typical scenario here. People do try and save the nice old trees. And generally, when you have an ordinance like that, they end up implementing something that says, now you got to hire I don't know if they call them a tree expert, to go out and tag the trees that you can't cut. And we had that happen on some property over by Bald Eagle Lake Road, where somebody had to go through and mark a bunch of them. And I remember walking through it with the property owner thinking, this is just ridiculous.
Okay, so should I remove that, or did you guys want me to add it? You mentioned adding it to Dixie.
I could see it on Dixie, but I wouldn't want to see it anywhere else. But I could also get rid of it and not lose any sleep.
I think.
How many landmark trees do you think we have in the Dixie corridor?
Not
not too many. I think you could take it out because under the overlay district, if somebody came in with a site plan and he had a beautiful 300-year-old walnut tree there and he said, I'm taking that tree out, you'd be able to say under the overlay district, no, you're not, right? We've decided that's a key feature of that property and we want it preserved. And I don't think we need a tree ordinance to necessarily do it in the limited number of cases that it might apply. But I think, Neil, to your point, I don't think we got a whole bunch of big ones left.
I can't think of any.
Yeah.
Wait, sorry, if you don't have an ordinance, how could you tell someone, no, they can't do that?
Well, when you do an overlay district, don't you have a lot of latitude in what you actually are able to approve or disapprove in the final design of the site plan? That's the whole purpose of it, to give us more than normal control over what we've done. Let's say you had a piece of property zone B2, they could do anything they want in B2. But if you do B2 in an overlay district, you could say, I want this kind of facade on the building, I want a sidewalk in the front, I want you to save these 3 trees. I thought we could do all that through the overlay.
Yes, but you'd have to write which kinds of trees you have to save. You can't just say, well, I guess you could say the planning commission can determine which trees to save.
That's how we want.
If you want.
Yeah, we would say, the subject, historical trees and landscaping or historical anything, right? But yeah, we can write the overlay district to cover that.
I think that's a better way to do it instead of trying to finite explain it, because there'll always be some derivative or permutation you didn't anticipate. And now you're going to say, do we have to write another ordinance, change it for that tree?
Okay. The next one is require reasonable setbacks to protect natural features, including wetlands, forested areas, view sheds, and other sensitive features. So those are typically, those
We
are
have to
pretty
do that
common.
anyway. Yeah,
What's that?
we have to do that anyway. The wetlands and stuff always have to be preserved, and the developers know that they have to get it mapped first. They can't touch it.
Right, for state mandated
Mhm.
wetlands. So typically it's, 50 to 100 feet or something like that, but that can be in a local ordinance.
So, help me out here. This is an action plan to make an ordinance. I mean, we have setbacks, right?
Do you have in your local ordinance setbacks that for all of these features?
Well,
Now,
I think what Bob is saying is that you rely on the state for certain wetlands because they regulate certain wetlands. There's certain ones that they do not regulate though. They also, I don't know if the state has, I don't think they do setbacks from, I mean, view sheds was something that came up a lot in the kind of materials that I was given. And there were a few view sheds that were located on Dixie Highway. Maybe this is what we're talking about with the scenic bypass outlooks.
Yes,
But
yeah.
those are
So this,
probably undevelopable any other way, and that's what Ben was just saying, and that consultant the county hired was just saying, these are nice assets, try and preserve them. And there's really not, and a couple of them he pointed to, I remember, you couldn't do anything else with them anyway. They weren't big enough in the distance from the road to the lake, for example. If we try and regulate the wetlands beyond what's there, you've got to have somebody that has the ability to make that determination. And it gets very hard to do in a place like ours. And we have a lot of property that might have wetlands that's technically zoned agricultural use. And while it's farmland or mining property, you cannot regulate the wetlands the same way because most of the state mining laws and agricultural laws say have farmer comply right through that stand of cattails because he's draining the field. And in a mining operation, you can't tell them they can't take the minerals out. It's after they're done that somebody declares it a wetland. It has to be left alone. That's generally what happens there.
So this is referring to building on top of wetlands. So I'm just saying the requirement is like a setback. If you were to build a home, you don't build it. You have to build it within, it has to be at least 50 to 100 yards back.
On an actual wetland, If it's a designated wetland like a floodplain, we adopted the National Floodplain Code. So you can build right in the middle of a floodplain as long as you make it to national floodplain standards, which might mean building a house 8 feet up on stilts. And we did that. We adopted it because originally we weren't in the floodplain program with the federal government until I put us in I think, 96. And that precludes you from being able to have somebody come in and say, the township confiscated the value of my property because they won't let me build on it. So we go, you can build on it. You just got to build to the national floodplain standards. It might cost you 3 times as much and your house will be standing up in stilts in the swamp, but you can do it.
And see, I see this as one that was generated through our discussions about the Dixie Highway corridor, because when we talk about view sheds, you know, we're not going to go out on a gravel road to somebody's private property and regulate that they keep a view from the road of some pond or something, right? So this is, I think, all a result of the Dan Marriott visit, and where he talked about some of the things that we want to consider as we do the Dixie byway. So I think this one goes up to, again, these are things that we need to incorporate in the overlay district.
Yes.
Okay. So I'm wondering if we should just get rid of this category then, if there's only going to be one action, unless you guys want to, or you have other actions you want to add here.
No, I mean, I honestly think all of these action plans, not all of them, but I mean, as I look at them, I think these are just primarily all about the Dixie overlay, which was.
Well, that's what it's turning out to be. One
Yeah,
big action,
yeah.
and that's it.
Yeah, I mean, it's elements of the corridor and the various nodes and the things that we want to consider and put in, but you know, now, for example, develop and enforce a rental inspection code. I mean, I don't think that, you know, partner with healthcare providers to develop age-in-place housing, you know, that's going to be along the Dixie corridor. I mean, you know, when I look at these, there's the odd one that's not, but on the whole, I think this came about with the discussions we had with Ben, as we kept talking about, well, what are we going to do with the Dixie overlay corridor? And we were trying to incorporate the input that we'd see from Dan Marriott, you know, et cetera.
Our community's density is so low, we do those things effectively through the county health department when we have a case that comes up. Try and make this a whole bureaucracy within a community this small is just an administrative nightmare with no real benefit.
For what action?
You know, develop the senior care health stuff, those other, the last 3 or so items you meant. We do that with them when we end up running into somebody that has a problem through the county. There's just not enough of it here to validate making it an action item, I think, for us to do right now.
Okay, so then if we're removing all of these, so then should it just be these first few?
I think.
Yeah, and I think we need to incorporate as considerations as we develop the overlay district, you know, non-motorized connections between recreational areas. I mean, I think that's part of it. I think these are all considerations that we need as we consider that. And
well, this
so
isn't an overlay item. Non-motorized connections, I mean, that's the sidewalks that we talked about. This was like a step further of actually doing them yourselves. But that, if we're just concerned about sidewalks and all of that, that's basically covered here.
Well, I mean, we talked, one of the comments had been, you know, an overhead pedestrian walkway, you know, to cross, like maybe at the Grange Hall, Dixie Highway, you know, that we have a way to cross, you know, over. So, I mean, there had been discussions, which I would look at as the down at the bottom, explore non-motorized connections between recreational sites. I mean, we,
but
to the extent that we might have.
But on Dixie Highway.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, does anybody remember it differently?
That's where all those items typically are, right? Up and down the corridor.
Yes, but you know, they are phenomenally expensive. Most of those discussions were with Oakland County Parks, trying to provide a way to get people from the parks side of the property over to the ORV side of Dixie Highway. And how would they do it? And it's expensive to do it. So the township's not going to do it. I mean, it's just too expensive. If they have a high volume need between, so let's say they start parking over next to Groveland Oaks, and to get to the other side, they're going to have to put that in to make that happen. We're not going to end up doing it. And we certainly wouldn't have a problem with them doing it, but it's very expensive.
Yep.
Okay, so aside from the corridors and nodes, is there anything else that you guys want me to add here? Anything else you think is missed or needs to be modified?
I think it's fine the way it is.
Okay.
Yep, I agree.
Okay, well then the next steps are that if you guys have if a week is okay, enough time for you, then you'll send your edits over to Danielle. Danielle and I will coordinate. I'll make the changes. And then procedurally what has to happen is this has to go to the township board. So ideally in their April meeting, if there's time, it's a very quick item unless they're a group that likes to discuss a lot. But the next step is that they have to approve this for distribution. So then that means we will send out those notifications to all of the surrounding communities and let them know that this plan is open to the public for 63 days. It'll have my name on it unless you want someone else's, and all of those comments that the public or stakeholders have will come to me and I collect all of them. I'm happy to share them with you. If we want to incorporate them, we can. We don't have to. And then at the end of those 63 days, we hold a public hearing with the Planning Commission. So say this goes to the Board of Trustees in April and they approve it for 63-day review, then we're looking at, you know, May, June, probably sometime early July that this would, or end of July, come back to you for the public hearing, which we'll have to notice according to all those rules. And then if you approve it, by law, it is approved unless your ordinance says that it has to go back to the board for them to do the final approval, then it'll go to them and then it will be adopted. So we're looking at this summer, this should be adopted.
Yes.
Sounds good.
Board will approve it right away, I'm sure. We've just been waiting for this, so we want to
Okay. Okay,
So-
great. Do you think it can go to their April meeting?
get it to me. We'll get it on April.
Okay,
Danielle will make sure that Patty knows to put it on the agenda.
okay.
So just a question that I have, because I get anal sometimes about details, but because it can get really difficult and overwhelming when you provide feedback from a whole lot of people. So, and my question is the format that people will be providing their responses. So right now, you have the document as a PDF.
Mhm.
And what I did, because I did a lot of edits, I converted it to a Word document.
Mhm.
And so I don't care, I don't have a preference, but I'm just curious, and I'm asking the various commission members what your plans were on how you were going to provide feedback so it doesn't make 5 times more work than it needs to be for Danielle and Michelle. So I'm just curious, were you going to just write notes and submit your handwritten or your notes on the document? Or how were you planning on doing it?
Danielle is super. They just get it to Danielle, she'll get it in a common form for her.
Again, most of the comments I have are very small, simple things. And I've just got them, I've got my little notebook. I was just going to type it up and just say, you know, page
That's an
44,
email.
paragraph 2. You said these words, you might want to rephrase it something like this.
Okay.
That's
Okay.
kind of it. And,
Okay.
and I'm loose on it. It's like they had a placeholder for something and then they put the actual name in, but they were still both side by side. You know, it just needed to be one or the other. Small stuff.
Yeah.
But and again, my list is not long. It's just a couple.
Okay, let's actually just think about the timing here. So Bob, when is the board meeting in April?
April, I think it's, what's the second Monday, the 12th?
Okay, so when do packets go out to them by?
Well, ideally a few days ahead of time, but sometimes the stuff gets out just a day or two before the meeting. Just depends.
Okay, well, let's just plan for a perfect world where they get it. So April 12th, so say you get it to them like what, the 7th or 8th?
That should be good.
So then I would say if the commissioners then, just to give me a week to work with Danielle, if you could get all of your comments to Danielle and me by, the 30th or the 31st.
Yeah, I'll have mine the next day or two, because I got them written down. I just got to type an email and I'm done.
Just don't make it April Fool's Day.
That's right, before April Fools.
Okay.
Okay,
Thank you.
that's all for me.
Thank you to everybody that's worked on this document. I know it's been a long time coming, and I think it's a valuable document.
Yeah, I hope so. I hope you guys find it useful.
Thank you, Jenny. Thank you.
Yep, I think we will. So I think we're coming to Lynn's favorite time of the meeting.
Oh, we adjourn. Is there a
We have a
second?
second?
Second.
All right, all those in favor of adjournment, say aye.
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 Anybody say nay, don't say it.
Yeah.
All right, thank you, everybody. It was good to
Good
see
night,
everyone.
thank you.
Thanks,
Good night,
Kay.
everybody.
Appreciate it.
Stay well.
All right.